Welcome back. Welcome back. I'm Ana Maria Salazar. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to thank all of you who've been joining us throughout the years. We've been on the air since 2005. I really appreciate you joining us this weekend. It's a special weekend for the international community, for those of all of us who follow very closely the climate change discussions, climate change agreements, climate change concerns around the world. The COP26 is taking place in Glasgow as we speak this weekend. And fortunately for us, one of our frequent guests on the show is there, Ambassador Miguel Ruiz Cabañas. You know him well. He's a career ambassador. He's been ambassador all over the world, but right now he is in Glasgow. He currently is the director of the Initiative for Development at the Tec de Monterrey. Ambassador, welcome to the show. Just give us a sense as the environment. Just tell us, describe to our audience in detail, what is it like to be at one of these events, international events, where there is a lot of concern in regards to the future of humankind and whether our leaders are going to reach some type of agreement. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ana Maria. Well, I'm very glad to be here. This is not my first, conference of states parties of the Climate Convention. This is actually probably the sixth or seventh conference. But this conference, as you just mentioned, is particularly important because it's the first after the pandemic. It was postponed last year. It was postponed until now because of the pandemic. But every 5 years, countries must present national determined contributions to reduce emissions. And there are 5 or 6 areas for this conference which are instrumental for the future of humankind, as you just said. And it's not an exaggeration because the challenge, there is a global challenge, is to reduce 40% of the current emissions of gases that produce, the efecto invernadero, which is a really of key importance for stopping climate change. Problem is that with the current level of emissions, that is not likely to happen. So countries must make an extraordinary effort to accelerate the energy transition, since the energy transition is the sector that produces most of these emissions. So it is very difficult, but I think it's doable if there are 2 things: political will and technical tools to convince countries that we can do it. For this, it's essential that the developed countries commit and fulfill their commitment to provide $100 billion every year to developing nations so they can produce national plans for mitigation and adaptation. This is really the core of this conference. If developed nations are really responsible, I think we reach that objective. I'm very glad. Fortunate news for this conference is that the US is back.
Yeah.
The US is back, not only President Biden, a special envoy, John Kerry. He has been instrumental in the good spirit that has taken place here this first week. Mm-hmm. The conference lasts November 13, so let's see what happens in the coming days. But I am moderately optimistic.
Well, let me ask you this, because there's been a lot of discussion here in Mexico in regards to what has been the government of Mexico's position. I mean, you heard on one of the, I'm sure you heard the President Manuel López Obrador talking about deforestation program, Sembrando Vida, that he promotes, he's been promoting since he became president, as one of the models that is being used for this agreement that was signed at the beginning of this meeting of the COP26 that Sembrando Vida was the model for this agreement, forestation agreement. It is an extraordinary program, but he's saying it was the model. Most analysts think that's not the case, but it seems that is the position, or what Mexico is contributing to the discussion in this COP26. So could you just kind of walk us through who's there from the Mexican government? What participation have they had? What's their position? Do you have any sense?
Well, I have to say that Mexico used to be one of the leaders in the international movement to reduce emissions and to combat climate change. It was recognized as such for many years. I have to say this administration, it seems that it is not so much interested in participating in the international fight against climate change. Why I'm saying this? Well, first of all, they haven't increased the level of ambition of emissions reduction. That's one indicator that they are not very interested in reducing more emissions. Two, the program, as you said, the reforestation, Sembrando Vida, well, in the best scenario, will have an effect in 10 or 15 years. It is a good thing that countries do have these programs for reforestation, but they don't have an impact really until 10 or 15 years. And so you can evaluate whether or not that program was really successful. So it's not a short or a mid-term program. One. Second, of course, there have been many declarations adopted by the United Nations, at least since the 80s, about forests, about reforestation, about the last one was adopted in 2014, 7 years ago. And that declaration is the model for the declaration that was adopted this week. And well, Mexico was not one of the original sponsors of the declaration. Mexico decided to join them after the declaration had been issued and had been presented. So Mexico really was a last comer for the declaration. And no, I don't think that it was inspired of the programa Sembrando Vida, because as I said, there was another declaration adopted in the year 2014, exactly for the same purpose. So no, again, it's a good thing that we have this program, but it will not have an environmental impact soon, nor in the midterm, maybe in the long term, depending that the program had been successful.
Yes, today is Ambassador Miguel Ruiz Cabañas. You know him well. He's been joining us throughout the years. He is now in Glasgow, in Scotland, at this meeting, COP26, where there's thousands. Can you describe to us how many people are there? Who is present? Are there still presidents, leaders? What is
almost 20. I'm sorry, I can't hear you now.
How many people are present at this meeting?
At the meeting, almost 28,000 persons right now. And I know because I asked the secretariat and they just informed me that it's almost 28,000, which surpasses the last COP that took place in Madrid before the pandemic. So it's really a lot of people here. That's why we are all the time wearing these masks. You see? It's exactly, I'm sorry. With the name of the conference and everything is here.
For those of our radio listeners, it's a mask that it's black and it says climate change. That all of the listeners, all of the participants are using. This is a kind of description for our listeners, our radio listeners. Let me ask you this, Ambassador, and I think it's important to highlight the participation and the role of an extraordinary Mexican woman, Patricia Espinosa, former Secretary of Foreign Relations for President Calderon. And she now is the director. She's the person, she's the executive director of this meeting. And I don't think she's been recognized sufficiently in Mexico, the important role she's playing. Could you describe who is Patricia Espinosa? What is her role at COP26?
Well, Patricia Espinosa, as you said, is a member of the Mexican Foreign Service. She went through all the ranks until she reached the rank of ambassador. She was ambassador in Germany as well as in Austria. And then she was chosen by then President-elect Felipe Calderon to be the Minister of Foreign Affairs. She stayed in her position for 6 years. And in 2010, she presided the COP16, 11 years ago. As in that capacity, she made a tremendous job. And many people thought that she was saving the multilateral process because that conference came 1 year after the COP15. That was, I have to say, a complete disaster in Denmark. And then next year, it was in Cancun, and Mexico as a host was able, under craftsmanship of Patricia, to really work for an agreement. And then the multilateral process revived that year. And so when the moment came to replace the former executive director of the Office of the United Nations on Climate Change, she was an obvious candidate. At the time, she was the Mexican ambassador to Germany, but she was really proposed by many groups and governments. And at the end, she decided to accept.
Let me ask you this. Who is there from Mexico? Because we saw images of former President Felipe Calderon. I saw also a Senator, Xochitl Galvez. My understanding is that some more senators will be going, including Gabriel Cuadri, legislators, not senators. Who is there right now?
Well, the head of the delegation has not arrived yet. She's supposed to be here next week. She's the Secretary of Environment, Luisa Albores, but she hasn't come yet. And the current head of the delegation is the Vice Minister for Multilateral Affairs at the SRE, and Marta Delgado. And the other people are really experts either in the Mexican Foreign Ministry or all of them are from the Mexican Foreign Ministry. We don't have people from Semarnat, and that I think shows how unimportant the issue is really for the López Obrador administration.
Well, it's always
since you don't have,
yeah, you don't have the level of representation that it would be called for, Mexico, considering the importance of this.
Mexico didn't participate at the high level debate because it was focused only presidents, prime ministers, and heads of state and government.
Yeah.
And Mexico didn't have a minister here.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's always great to have you on the show. I really appreciate you joining us from Glasgow in Scotland as this COP26 meeting is taking place. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ambassador, for joining us here on Living in Mexico.
Thank you. Thank you, Ana Maria. My pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.